blue macoxic out.
Oh my, you don't want that. Hey, Bill, it's been forever, dude.
You know what? You're as beautiful as I remember. That's all I can say.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
New year, I'm trying.
It's like I went through, I was looking at all the Christmas lights and I was putting them away. And then I found my old middle school catcher's mitt. And like I pull that thing out and I smell it, I put it up to my face. That's what I'm feeling right now when I see you. Is that I'm seeing my old catcher's mitt.
I knew that was coming. You work in
It's
the
just
catcher's mitt.
it's an aroma.
I'm gonna do more. I thought you were talking about my face looks like a catcher's mitt.
Oh, I am.
I figured.
And your face has an aroma.
Nice. All the way through the internets.
Yeah.
Nice.
How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm much better. Apologies to everyone for this long hiatus here. That flu that's going around sucks. Down for a week. I lost almost 10 pounds and took a long time to recover. As you know, Bill, we talked about this before going on air. I had to miss promotions, which
sucks.
Yeah, that was really bad for me because I really wanted to see our folks. You know how it is. Yeah, I don't have to tell you.
Does this mean you're going to go to lightweight?
No, I'm already back up to where I'm already back. Dude, I was eating like I had a purpose, my friend. Once I get my appetite back, I'm back up to middleweight, so I'm good.
Absolute savage in the kitchen.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say we had quite a few little questions and comments coming in that were kind of directed more towards you.
Mm-hmm.
They had to do with more like injuries and BPC 157 peptides, some workout protocols, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you just doing continued research found that there was also some cool newer research on performance and circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
So I think what we'll do is we'll start with a couple of the listener questions, which starts with a workout protocol that someone brought to our attention, the BPC 157, and then a hip issue, and then we'll jump into the circadian rhythm.
Oh.
So just for people just starting and listening to us, that's how we're going to run through this.
Nice. That sounds good.
So I'll just kick it off. We had a guy named Jason Smith email in a pretty lengthy email that was more so directed at you. I believe he's Strong First, which is the Pavel Tsatsouline kettlebell system and like free weight system. He brought to our attention a workout protocol that they have that is really, I don't want to say geared towards grapplers, but it seems to have a lot of benefits towards grapplers. Why don't you just kind of go over what Jason said in his email and kind of what your opinions are on it?
Yeah, and you guys can find this on Strong First website. It was under an article geared at the tactical athlete, meaning like first responders or military, law enforcement, that type of thing, where they have to use their body to perform and respond to unforeseen type of things, right? Whether it's, what you could fill in the blank, whatever it would be, something you can't predict that you have to be kind of ready for at all times and have your body ready with recovery, the whole 9 yards. He's a Masters 4, so, he's getting long in the tooth like me. I'm almost Masters 6.
Master 4 Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's a Masters 4. That's what he said in his email. So, he's over 45. So all these things that he's talking about, I like the Strong First, their whole philosophy in general. Pavel has a really good thing about making gains very smartly, training smartly in that, they don't really like going to exhaustion. And that's what his whole point was when Jason sent that. He's like, I'm older. I'm trying to get my training in jiu-jitsu, but I also want to supplement that. And so he linked me the article, and I love it. He said, just forget about the tactical thing. and he had some ideas about modifying that for the jiu-jitsu athlete, which I thought were really good. So I encourage, I'm not going to go read that entire article, but it's really interesting. It focuses on, it gives people a program to follow. And Jason suggested that in place, they have like your main program, and then they have a supplemental type of thing. And he was recommending like replacing whatever they had for the supplemental section in with your rolling, right? Basically trying to tailor it for jiu-jitsu. Yeah, so I thought it was really good. And they also have on the Strong First website, they have a program for jiu-jitsu, believe it or not. You can go and look on that. There's a lot of people that are in that community that are martial artists and jiu-jitsu practitioners as well. Their senior instructors are all incredible. Obviously, Pavel is kind of groundbreaking when he kind of brought this stuff to the United States. But my one of the jiu-jitsu protocols, and one of the things I've used is these long cycle type. They're so-called long cycle, like clean and press, clean and jerk, things like that, where you're doing like reps on the minute, right? Let's just say you do 5. I'm just making it up right now. Let's say every minute you do 5 clean and presses, double kettlebell clean and presses. Whenever when a minute starts, you do your 5 reps, then you put the bells down and rest, and then on the next minute you'll do another one. It's kind of it gives you recovery time in between, but it's a long period of time to not only build up strength endurance, but build up some aerobic capacity too, which is really important. I encourage everyone to kind of look into just kind of do a deep dive on the Strong First website. There's a wealth of information there. And Jason, I thought that's a great idea. Like I said, I'm not gonna. It would really be a little unwieldy to go through on the podcast to read every little bit of it. But I think you're, responding directly to you, Jason. I think that is a really good protocol. And if you wouldn't mind, if you've implemented it for a while, I would like to know how that's going. Is it sustainable for you? And are you able to recover? Which is the whole purpose, and because that would be very interesting, because this is programmed in a way to maximize your recovery and not go to failure and things like that. So
yeah, and Master 4 is 45 years to 50, so just to give people, if they're not sure, what kind of context that is, and Strong First, that whole program, correct me if I'm wrong, a big thing is their motto, and I think it's one of the things you're a fan of, is they want you to be able to work out every day, or at least able to, so you're not blowing your system, your nervous system and your muscles out to the point that the next day you're completely tore up and you can't do jiu-jitsu, you can't do an active recovery, you can't even work out again, right?
You're bringing up a great point we've talked about a bunch. So even not necessarily every day, but frequently, maybe 5-6 days a week, right? But to your point, that's exactly right. You're not going to failure. You're getting a good stimulus for growth, but you're allowing yourself to recover. Now, a lot of people listening, and unfortunately, many of us are still, jiu-jitsu practitioners are still doing their strength and conditioning with like either a bodybuilder model or a powerlifting model, right?
Yeah.
Both are fine if those are your sports, but understand we're trying to gear this really to, if you like that stuff, great. I've said this before, I'm not telling you not to do it, but we're trying to optimize strength and conditioning to support your jiu-jitsu. And that's the whole, when I give an opinion, typically that's my goal anyway. If I was a bodybuilder, which I'm very obviously not, I would have a completely, that's where things like going near to failure, really trying to maximize hypertrophy, things like that. That's a different approach. And you can't serve 2 different masters and optimize everything. You really know what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Have you seen, just a side note, because I'm going to say I was ahead of it. have you seen the amount of hate our friend Dr. Mike Israel, whatever, I forgot his name, but yeah, Israetel. Have you caught this guy's getting torched lately?
About what? No, I don't follow that. No, I follow his site, but I don't know. I'm not privy to
Yeah.
all the trolls and stuff. So what's going on?
Well, so what I'm gathering is one of the reasons people like this guy is that he makes kind of uh, statements that are ir almost like irrefutable. He'll say them as complete gospel and fact, which is that was my big bugaboo with the guy,
The
right?
seed oils and stuff, right? Yeah.
Well, he does that with a lot of things, is what I've gathered. I don't watch his content, but I've started to see commentators like other podcasts and stuff talking about him, and I guess he's done it with a couple other things with like bodybuilding and some other stuff. And so the whole bodybuilding community has like turned their back on this guy and they're just torching him. But from what I watched on someone's commentary about the whole scenario, because I love gossip, I'm a Real Housewives, um, is one, that's why people like him, is because he says kind of outlandish stuff and all that. But then number two, um, that it makes other people angry and people like that. So it's hard to tell when he's just kind of, I mean, I get it. I am Mr. like say something ridiculous. So
Yeah, yeah. The righteous indignation is a currency now, right? Where you
yeah.
you want to be mad about something, right?
Yeah, so
but it's driving traffic towards his site, man. I mean,
guarantee it.
I think a lot of his stuff he says is snarky and kind of trolly, and I think he's funny.
Yeah, there's obviously an intention behind that.
Well, and when you attack a sacred cow, whatever that is, to whatever community, you're going to get hate. And what's funny is if you lump all these communities that are mad at him together, they're kind of the top 1% of the American population as far as physical fitness. So,
true.
If you think about what we're arguing about, we have all these people that their goal in life is some kind of physical, they have physical goals for their body, and when most of the population does not. And we're arguing amongst ourselves about this nonsense, and we have this bunch of people that aren't doing anything. So I always think that's hilarious, right?
Yeah, it's like when we started seeing recently, I think like Elon and Vivek and like this group of like on the same team, but they're arguing in turn like with each other publicly. So it's kind of a funny, like kind of a optic.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like we're arguing over the minutia of set and rep schemes, maybe.
Right,
you know what I mean? When someone else is not even picking up a weight, so
yeah.
It's just it's funny. Anyway.
So awesome content from Jason. I'm gonna actually link that in the description, the article that he sent from Strong First, so people don't have to go searching for it. It'll be right down there.
Good. Yeah. I there's a lot of stuff you can take away from it.
Yeah. Moving on to, we got a question for you. Quote, is there an efficacious BP157 capsule out yet rather than just injections?
Yeah. I think there still is one or two out there. As far as efficacious, good luck.
Right, like,
I mean, based on what? Randomized controlled trials on the capsule versus the injection. I mean,
I would assume what they're asking is, can BPC 157 be efficacious in capsule form?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
BPC 157 itself, a body protective compound, is what BPC stands for, and it is actually secreted in the gut. So, taking it orally, for sure, kind of mimics.
And it's just going to find its way to wherever needs repair. Because I know when I've injected, it's always at the site of injury.
That's just to give the maximum amount so it doesn't go systemic, right? It's the idea of like, not that I'm a huge fan of, steroid injections anyway, but let's say, we're taking oral prednisone versus, injecting a similar steroid in a joint, right? We definitely, oral steroids that go systemic, have a lot more side effects. That doesn't apply to BPC necessarily, but I'm just saying, we're trying to target things with an injection to get the max amount of stuff where it should go. That makes sense. I think in general, supplementing BPC, this is anecdotal. I do. I would have to go see what brand is still that we have. Carrie procures all this stuff because she is the peptide master. So she has all these contacts with with different places that manufacture this stuff. I think we're going to see with the new administration. I think we're going to see an opening up of this whole, the availability of these oral like BPC. Not to mention the injectable stuff is going to be much more available again. Without the federal government's foot on the compounding pharmacy's neck, so to speak. I think that's gonna hopefully change for the better. Matter of fact, that's one of their on their platform is to stop the war on peptides. So I'm optimistic that there's going to be more on the market, which means that in general, when there's competition, we typically see an increase in quality. And hopefully a decrease in price. And I can't remember off the top of my head which one. I'd have to get up out of the chair and go to the kitchen and see what brand I actually have.
Right.
Yeah, there are some. But as far as, I take it at night. I take an oral one at night in general. I think it helps me recover. The anecdote is that I've had, I think I have a little less soreness. When I do have like a little muscle strain or something, I feel like I'm recovering a little quicker. But, again, that's just my own personal experience. And I've heard the same from a lot of people. So, I don't, until this stuff really becomes widely used and the problem is with doing clinical trials in general is there has to be usually some type of monetary incentive on the other side to do these things, right? And if this is a non-patentable thing, the idea that we're going to get these very expensive clinical trials done is, it's probably not going to happen because they are very pricey to do. And you need a return on investment for that kind of stuff. So anyway.
Well, next after the pod, maybe you can go look at what that brand is. And tell Carl.
Yeah.
He's the one that asked the question.
Oh,
Carl.
Yeah. He. By the way, he came up with a really good idea that we're implementing. We now have several over 50-year-olds at the academy. We have a whole little team. They are multiplying, and he came up with like a BJJRP card instead of AARP. And so I was like, damn, that's an awesome idea. And we thought about doing like reserved parking spots, closer to the academy, and T-shirts, rash guards, and a card, and reserved seating inside.
You get your little booth at Kate's Cafe.
Anyway, I just wanted to give him a props to that because that was an awesome idea he had. Anyway,
that's horrible, Carl. Stop thinking.
If that's Carl, I'll get him that offline.
Yeah. Another issue, we have a black belt actually down here so as most BJJ practitioners do, he had an injury for about the last 6 months and hasn't really addressed it. And it's getting to the point where it's affecting his life outside of the gym.
Yes. Okay.
So kind of an odd issue. I know a lot of the time, if you guys email in a question about an injury, something that's absolutely imperative to know is the mechanism of injury. And what we mean by that is how it happened. What was the moment? What were you doing in that moment when you felt the injury? happen.
Can you describe your limb/joint position too? For me, 90% of the diagnosis is that history, and then laying hands on someone and doing some provocative testing, that kind of thing, to really narrow down. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah, and Chris just likes touching dudes uh, in a provocative way, as he just admitted. So if you can get yourself in front of the man, just know that those little sausage fingers are coming at you. And they're not the thick ones. They're like the little, like, when you get a little LP, just they're proportionate, but they're sausagey. And so with that, this fella, he's getting a lot of pain on the side of his hip. So,
Okay, let's stop.
mhm.
I've heard people describe the hip as many different things. Okay, that's the first thing. So when you say hip, are we talking about the actual
So literally the side, if I were to cut my body in half, right on the side here.
Yeah.
It's hard to get the camera to focus.
Yeah, but do you know do you know where the femur comes up on the outside? The actual bone, where people fall. That's the actual hip. Where you're pointing is up on the pelvis. So
so the tension is he can do like forward and back kind of bends, not too much pain, and unless he's really pushing his hips forward and leaning back, but more so when he does a side bend. So if he's gonna do, like, he's just standing straight, hands on the hip, and he kind of does a side bend and kind of jaunts his hip out, that's when he's getting a tremendous amount of pain. So if I'm leaning right, the left hip or area starts to have quite a bit of pain.
Okay. So right away, that's not his hip. Okay, that's number one. Yeah, this is called the lumbopelvic complex, where the lumbar spine and the pelvis link up. The ilium, which is that big crest thing. The ilium.
Is that the big, like,
yes,
paddle looking?
Yep. On the either side of the tailbone, exactly. And the actual hip joint, the ilium has a little socket in there called the acetabulum, but that's down lower where the head of the femur fits in. Now that's the actual hip joint, but what he's talking about is up where the pelvis and the lumbar spine kind of interact with each other on the side. So yeah, I have some ideas on that, just on anatomic location. Of course, trying to poke around and make sure that we're all talking about the same thing is always helpful.
And it was 6 months ago, so I tried asking him when, how, were you playing guard, what. Too long ago, he doesn't know.
So there could be there could be an initial injury, and there could be compensatory things that have developed since then. Okay. Yeah. And so, that's why we don't like chasing the side of pain, because we might, it's like, oh, it hurts there, that's the problem. Maybe not. So what it sounds like, it'd be really good to get the mechanism, but if someone is side bending and they're having pain in the opposite side of where they're side bending, I start looking at things like sacroiliac joint, quadratus lumborum, which is that long, very deep stabilizer muscle that goes from the ilium to the 12th rib, okay? And it's that side-to-side stabilization of the lumbar spine. He also could have like an iliolumbar ligament sprain. I mean, all these things I need to get hands-on with. What I would suggest he do, and if he has not done this already, since if I was local, I'd be happy to evaluate him. I would have him get a referral to a really good sports medicine physical therapist and have them assess. That's what I would do, because otherwise I have some ideas what could be going on, but if we start going and making assumptions and recommend doing stuff, it could be the exact opposite of what he needs, actually, depending on what's going on.
So like rolling out with a lacrosse ball or something like that, it's like that might help, but it also might not do anything or make things worse.
Or probably not make it worse, but you may be just going for the symptomatic spot. There may be a dysfunctional thing going on there that is causing all this that needs to be really evaluated. That's why someone that is Not just any run-of-the-mill physical therapist, someone that really has an interest and expertise in kind of that sports medicine approach, functional movement type of evaluations, and really kind of see what's going on there. Because it doesn't sound like a hip, my point is. It's
right.
Yeah, it sounds like something, either like sacroiliac joint, like I said, all those iliolumbar ligament, quadratus lumborum, all these different things in that area that would produce that kind of symptomology with a side bending. But anyway, that's what I'd recommend he do, and not mess around anymore and be stubborn like we all are, and find someone out. And even if you just get a good assessment, it doesn't mean you have to go and do 12 visits of physical therapy. But go in there, have them evaluate you, and give them, and you can get some recommendations for corrective exercise or any other workup that needs to be done.
I'd be interested to hear what the results of that were, because then maybe if we have some solid results, maybe we can actually give a little bit more in-depth answer of stuff that you can do at home. And
if he gets a good assessment done, and we kind of figure out what's dysfunctional, we can absolutely I can tell you what I would do for myself.
Yeah. And I know we have a purple belt. I don't think he's part of our gym, but he's a PT that is a purple belt that's a sports medicine guy that I think a lot of some of the athletes, the ones that compete a lot, end up going to. So I'll
even better. That's even
push
better
that direction,
because then you have someone it's a practitioner themselves too. Yeah.
Yeah. And that'll help with the mechanism thing, and just they understand kind of what we're putting our body through. Okay, cool. I'll let Daniel know about that. Let's move on to the circadian rhythm. So this was an interesting one. We've harped and talked about circadian rhythm. It is very widely looked at as being woo-woo-y. And a lot, I'm saying more so mainstream people, mainstream medical, they don't really consider the circadian rhythm from a lot of things that I see. They just look at it as like, dude, if you get your 6 to 8 hours of sleep, doesn't matter when it is, whether you're night shift or day shift or early or late, whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as you're just getting it. It's almost like nutrition. As long as you're getting your macros, it's all good. And it's like, well, even that's not necessarily true. So what did this article say? This is another one I will put in the description, so if people want to kind of thumb through it.
I think the one I sent you, gosh, it's been a while since I sent it. I think the one I sent you had to do with athletic performance and bright light exposure.
Yes.
Right? And so a little background on that. So the reason why I started thinking about it, I wanted to see what was new in the research. I don't even think that article's super new, but, wintertime Pacific Northwest, Bill, I mean, not, you're in Arizona now, but you know how it is in the wintertime here. We get dark at 4:30 and,
This article's from 2022.
Okay, so it's fairly recent.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, people, especially in the wintertime, or, it doesn't have to be the wintertime, but especially in the wintertime where we have decreased daylight time, and especially if we have overcast days and we're not getting a lot of bright sunshine. I was thinking about people that are competing, like, for instance, like our local competition here, or the Rev, our black belts start at 9 a.m. We're grappling at 9 a.m. Excuse me. And for many of us, that's probably not the optimal performance time for us. So I was thinking, is there a way we can kind of prep the body a little more for that? So before I get into that, I just want to go back and do a real quick review about how this stuff works. Circadian rhythm is just our body's own. It literally is a rhythm controlled by the brain, and it's about a little more than 24 hours of a cycle. You would think it'd be exactly 24. It's not. It's like 24.2 or something like that. But anyway, it's controlled by this really interesting mechanism, these molecular clocks. And what it is, every organ system, every cell, like liver, kidney, pancreas, the GI tract, heart, everything has these little molecular clocks within the cells. And what they are, it's gene expression making a protein that feeds back on itself. Okay, before you guys get like, what the hell is he talking about? Let me give you an analogy. Imagine if we had an assembly line, and what are we making, Bill? Give me something.
Bolts.
Bolts, okay. So we're making bolts. The thing producing the bolts has, we have a template, we have a whole manufacturing process. Okay, that's the gene expression piece. We're making this stuff. They go on the assembly line to a holding facility that has a scale on it. Okay, I'm making this up right now. If we manufacture enough of these bolts and they're going to pile up on this scale, at a certain point, the scale's going to signal the manufacturing piece to stop making them. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It shuts everything down. And then when people start taking stuff away out for delivery or packaging and the scale gets lighter, the feedback will turn back on the manufacturing process. So you can see how that would create a cycle, right? And depending on how fast people are taking away those bolts from the scale would be how long these cycles of on and off would be. That's kind of what happens. It's kind of how we get this little cycle rhythm in our body, where the gene will make a protein, and if enough proteins, and it's more complex than this, there's several of these things, but my point is, in simplistic form, the gene will make a protein. When enough protein is made, it will feed back and inhibit making it, right? It's a negative feedback loop. So that feedback loop in humans is like a 24-hour cycle. Okay, and that's how these things happen. Each individual organ system can do this, and it can be influenced by outside, like time, like for the GI tract, liver, and all that. The time you eat, that can all be kind of, we call it entrained. In other words, you can kind of train these to expect. Like if you always eat breakfast at 6 a.m., right before then, your body, you start grumbling, because it's like, oh, I know when I'm going to eat. That's the idea. Those are those organ clocks. Now, in the brain and the hypothalamus is the master clock that kind of regulates it. You can think of like a conductor in an orchestra. So if each organ system has its own clock, they're like different instruments in the orchestra, like a violin, a flute, or whatever. They can play on their own, but if we're going to make a song, we're going to make something that works together, we need a conductor like, okay, hey, let's get in line here. That's what the hypothalamus does. It's kind of the master clock that kind of regulates our circadian rhythm. And it's interesting, the biggest thing that stimulates that system in the brain is light. Okay? Especially bright, not only bright, but this is right up your alley, color temperature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, where the higher color temperature is more of the harsh, white-looking, bluish-looking light. Lower color temperatures are the kind of the softer, like more amber type of light.
Yeah, like daylight is considered 5600 Kelvin.
That's right.
And that's like what daylight is, like that lamp behind you there.
That's right.
Over your left shoulder, that's going to be like 3300, that real ambery.
That's right. And so that Kelvin color temperature is basically the perception of kind of the cold versus warm, or whatever, however you want to describe it. Well, the higher wavelengths, like daylight, like you said, and they actually make even higher Kelvin, like 6500 bulbs. Those correspond to shorter light wavelengths. So if we look at our rainbow, right, at one end of the rainbow are blue-violet stuff, the stuff we can see. And at the other end are like our reds, yellows, oranges, right? Mm-hmm. So the lower wavelengths, the blues and all that, correspond to that daylight type of high color temperature, where the lower ones correspond to the reds and all that. What's interesting, though, regarding this is we have cells in our eye that respond specifically to those lower wavelengths, especially the blue wavelengths of white light, and those turn off melatonin secretion. It basically that bright light tells the body, hey, circadian rhythm wise, we need to go from resting mode to prepare the body for activity. And our organ systems have those modes. Like when we sleep at night, a lot of regeneration happens. The organs are more in a rest state. They're not ramped up to support activity during the day. And when we get that bright light exposure first thing in the morning, it turns off that rest cycle and tells the body, hey, we got to get ready for activity, right? So that's why when we get daylight savings time or you're a shift worker, these systems are messed up because, for instance, with a shift worker, your organ systems and your brain thinks, hey, we should be in rest mode. But our signals, we're getting this conflicting signal and that, hey, we're having this bright light exposure, but our organ thinks we're supposed to be in rest mode. And conversely, when we're trying to go to sleep, when there's ambient light, we're getting light from the outside, our body's like, dude, we're supposed to be resting, or we're supposed to be we're supposed to be active, and why are you trying to sleep type of thing. That causes a whole bunch of metabolic stress in the body. And it's why shift workers have increased risk of heart attacks, stroke, cancer, diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases. It's a stress allostatic load, going back to our previous podcast, on the body. Now, I know it's a lot, but to make it even more interesting, there are genetic predispositions for people that are quote-unquote morning people, and you know them, and people that are, they call them night owls, right? And this is genetic. We've actually studied this. There is a genetic alteration in those clock genes to where people are more prone to being morning people or more like the night owl types. Okay. And it's nice to know where you are on that. You probably know intuitively if you are a morning or a evening type person. But there's actually a quiz online. It's called the Morningness Eveningness Questionnaire. you can look it up online, MEQ, and it asks a bunch of questions, and based on that, it will pop out a score. Are you a morning? Are you a night or intermediate? Why I'm bringing this up is because it's nice to know who you are. I'm not a morning person, and so if I have a competition at 9 a.m., right, my brain is still in the period like, dude, we haven't gotten my body aligned to say, hey, we need to be ready for activity now. My body's still like, dude, I'm still just coming out of rest mode, man. And so the whole purpose of this talk today is that paper shows if you give bright light exposure, we're talking about, the higher kelvins on the color temperature scale, like, 5,500, 6,500. You can get these like bright light emitters, which I have all over my house in the wintertime. That actually sends a direct signal to the brain to say, hey, stop. We're stopping rest mode. And if you have a competition at 9 a.m. and you're not used to doing high-level activity at that point, getting like at 6 a.m., this bright light exposure for 20 or 30 minutes will jumpstart the system and say, hey, we need to get ready for activity. And it gets all the clocks aligned, so we're ready to do that. And what's interesting in that paper that it references, these are not big studies, okay? They're not hundreds and thousands of people. They were relatively small. However, it was kind of interesting that what they did find is bright light exposure in the morning produced improved reaction time, improved cognitive ability. So we've all had training sessions where like, dude, I don't feel sharp today. I'm not putting stuff together, right? My transition.
You like pretty much every class, right?
Yeah, very good. Good. Yeah. At my expense. I appreciate that. So, yeah, but no, I do have days like that. I'm sure you do too. I'm sure
from your average, you can just tell that
dude, I'm just not. Yeah, I'm not focused in and all. So this bright light exposure actually can help with that, especially if you know your what we call your chronotype. Are you a morning or are you an evening person? If you're an evening person and you have a morning competition, it'd be a good idea to try to start what we call in training that and say, hey, look, I need to get prepped. It might help you as far as, reaction time, your cognitive ability, your sharpness in competition, thinking about strategy, so you just don't get into this weird flight or fight response, right? Or you're just kind of flailing about. I thought that was super interesting, though.
So how would you? I mean, you kind of mentioned how you do it.
Yeah.
How would you go about if you are that night owl, and it's like, dang. Okay,
or even if you're not, or even if you're not, and you're not used to doing that kind of level of activity at 9 a.m.
And you got that tournament coming.
Yep.
A month out, 2 weeks, 1 week.
It hasn't. Yeah, it hasn't been studied. That's what's interesting. It may even be that one exposure is enough. I personally don't think the body works like that. If you really wanted to do it, it's almost like training at altitude, right? Where, hey, why don't I try for the next 4 weeks? I mean, this is just speculation on my part.
Right.
But the body usually works like that. When you want your body to adapt to something and you want to have some meaningful adaptation, you want to have some consistency before then. I would suggest maybe, 4 weeks, start getting one of those light boxes or however you want to do it and really start hitting that hard, at least 3 hours before you're playing competition time. It might suck for a while, especially if you're not a morning person. But
so you're saying like 6 a.m. throw that light on your taint and like let it rip?
Well, I know that's where your eyes are, Bill. Most people have eyes in their head, though. Yeah. Don't put it on your taint. It's not going to work. It might for you.
Liver King says different, so watch your tone.
Okay. Well, you and the Liver King can put your heads together and see what happens. But I think, no, try. Yeah, a bright light, and the way I do it, I have a light box, and I actually have a. I'll tell you a little aside I have in a minute here, but you put it. You don't stare directly at it. Put it off to the side of your face. While you're checking emails, drinking coffee, or whatever you're doing. And that can help your alertness. Like I said, maybe some motor skills, reaction time, cognitive ability to get you a little sharper.
I think Huberman Lab did an episode on light therapy and stuff like that. And his recommendation was, if you can, try your first 10 minutes of the day is if you can go outside and get some of that sun, and he's like, you don't have to look directly at the thing and just but as long as there's some absorption through the eyes, which could be from a peripheral kind of position, you're doing yourself a big benefit.
I agree, but if you're in an environment that allows that. And so in the wintertime in Washington State, nope. If you go out 6 a.m., it's dark.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where these light boxes would come from.
Right. And that's all I'm saying is because sometimes we have to alter our environment. Because remember, these are environmental cues we're giving our body. And what's interesting is the people like myself that suffer from this seasonal affective disorder, where you get kind of down in the wintertime. It looks preposterous, but through my house, I have such bright, it looks like we're on the surface of Mercury or something. I turn it on. As soon as I get up in the morning, I have multiple rooms with these big light boxes. And man, I tell you, my mood is better. My productivity is better. And here's a point I want to make physiologically. When you do that first thing in the morning, and Huberman is an expert in this because that is what his area of neuroscience is the eye. And so he knows a ton about that stuff. But what this does is it creates a bookmark. It's like, yep, boom, we're shutting off melatonin. This is activity time at that time of day. And what that does is that resets your circadian rhythm as a start point. okay, for your activity time. What you'll find if you do this regularly, and what I find, is that then during the evening, I start getting tired normal. I'm like, oh, now I'm getting tired because I'd set it's almost like setting your clock, right? It is. And then turn the evening hours, you turn down your lights, which we have in our house, to those lower color temperature stuff. So we have a whole system of lighting in our house. In the evening time, I'll turn off all those bright lights, and some of the overheads have that very low color temperature, almost like those, very like the one behind me in that little lamp. And that helps signal, hey, it's time to wind down. That signals the brain, let's start ramping up melatonin production, and we need to go into rest mode. And so it's really, really interesting how that all works. But light is the biggest thing that what we call entrains this whole system. And I thought it was...
I like that it sounds like you live in like Tony Stark's house.
Actually, have you ever watched the old Seinfelds? Where they opened up the Kenny Rogers roaster right across from Kramer's window. Even though it was a red one, he was like,
right.
It's not that bad, but it's pretty bright. It's
pretty bright. It's funny just to like, I got these lights that they change and they can tell my mood, and if I need to be just from my body temperature.
Oh my God, no!
It senses my retina. It's just like he actually lives on a farm.
Yeah, I do. No, it doesn't. I just turn the stuff on, right? There's no sensing or anything like that. And then I just have other things like our overheads downstairs that we spend time during the evening times have that lower color temperature. That's all. It's not that sophisticated, dude.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but
it sounds cool.
But it would be cool even if you could do the same effect down in Arizona. First thing in the morning, you get out there and get that same. I mean, there's nothing better than the sunlight, right? I mean, all I'm trying to do up here is replicate.
That's kind of what I do. I let the dogs out in the backyard to go to the bathroom and all that first thing, and then I try to force myself because you'll just play with the dogs or whatever, which, I mean, you're still getting some light, but I try to force myself for like 5 minutes to just sit there and just not right at the sun, but just kind of like take it in. And if the thing is, for someone that's borderline retarded like myself, 5 minutes is like 5 hours. So like I'm getting like antsy sitting there, but
no, you just have the
does
ADD.
feel good.
You just have the ADD like me, dude.
right. Yeah.
But if you can do the way I always tell people to get this is, have that environmental thing, whether it's your outside sun or you're having it set up inside your house, where you're doing stuff while you're getting the exposure. So you're not just, because some people have, like myself, get a little antsy as well.
Sure.
But I think I notice a huge difference, and I think, especially if you're an evening type person and you're forced to train. And let me make one more point, because I know we're getting close to 50 minutes or so at this point. But I see, dang it, now it's gone. Oh no,
dementia
well,
has kicked in again, folks.
It's not dementia. It's that stupid
Alzheimer's.
ADD, man. No, it's not that either. Oh yeah, I know what I was going to say. So they have studied circadian rhythm in athletic performance, and quite consistently, they've shown that most people are at peak performance in like mid-afternoon. Like that would be the time where the body is set up to do its maximal performance type efforts in general. So if you're having to do, that's another reason to have, if you're having to do something earlier, setting that clock in your brain so it gets all those organ systems ramped up maybe a little earlier could be helpful. So
interesting.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting.
I'd love to hear if anybody has messed with this themselves, like they've already read this or heard this and they've started messing with some light therapy, and if they've noticed a performance enhancement, or maybe it's just a cognitive, where at training they're a little bit more attentive, they're a little bit more there, in the moment, or maybe they do feel less of those down days where I just don't got it. I feel if I try to think back and I connect them when I have night training and I was inside on the computer working, like editing or whatever all day, I definitely, one, it's harder to just get up and go. It's harder just to have the gumption to be physical. Um, but number two, I definitely feel that like a little bit of lethargic kind of feel, or just not quite myself, not at peak physicality.
Well, your circadian rhythm is, is according to, it should be winding down, right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to like, oh, now let's go strangle each other for,
Oh yeah, 7 p.m. training session is 7 p.m. start, and we don't start sparring till 7:30, 7:45. It's like hard. It is like legit hard on me.
Yeah. I mean, even this, we have a good one at 6 p.m. And we have to, because people have jobs, right?
Yeah.
But,
I think that's the money zone. Like, obviously, so I'm teaching at 4 o'clock, 3 days a week right now.
That's a perfect.
That time feels so good.
It should. That's your max athletic potential at that point, like 3 and 4 o'clock p.m. Yeah.
And like,
I told them they identified and recognized that I'm long-winded. I got jokes to tell, and I am a little bit, just my teaching style is a little bit more details. I'll explain the why. Not saying that's better or worse than any other style, just that's what I do. And they identified that. So we're starting the class earlier. So the class, it's always been 4 to 5, and because of me, they're starting at 3:30. So
that's hilarious. Well, it's good for it. I mean, they'll get a lot out of it, man. You have a great teaching style. Speaking of which, Andrew he may have shared this with you already, but he wanted me to actually tell you this. So on Saturday after class, he said, make sure you tell Bill that we did ecological training today. Did he tell you that?
No, yeah, he didn't actually, and I know why he's saying that. He's such a dirtbag. You probably haven't seen this stuff, but there's like memes out there about if the boys group chat gets made public, if Andrew and I's Marco Polos or video message to each other ever made public, especially when it comes to this ecological. Okay, next episode, this is going to be the first topic. I know we've talked about ecological stuff before, but it's coming back a little bit. It kind of died down, and now it's back in the news.
Okay. It's just funny because he made it a very strong point. He goes, make sure you tell Bill that we did this, today.
Yeah. I'm happy you guys are situational sparring. That's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Groundbreaking. Huh? It was a good class, but I didn't think, I certainly didn't think, oh wow, we're doing ecological training.
Andrew and I probably went.
It was bad. We had one day where we went back and forth and was sent 15-minute polos to each other, like back and forth, 1 2 1 2.
That's a problem.
Just
you may have a problem.
When you get your shirt off,
I get
it's hard to turn away.
And it's fine. I think we'll close this. It's to make fun of myself a little bit. We make fun of, I think all of us make fun of me, including myself, that I get grumpy. Because 55 now, right? I feel like I'm getting grumpier and not suffering fools anymore. But one of the things with the tying back into the circadian rhythm, I hate it so much in the spring that I take a week off of work right afterwards, dude.
It's true.
You know this. I've done this for years, and it's just like because I'm so grumpy, and it just shows you how much that little hour change doesn't sound like much. But the older you get, the more it messes you up.
Yeah, everything gets compounded as you get older. And obviously you got a head start on me, but it's like even in my 30s, 40s, it all starts to compound. And Alex Martinez, he's the owner of Aries East Mesa, the white-haired guy. He was just talking to me. The reason I'm taking 4 o'clock is because he needs that time for recovery.
Yeah.
He's like, he's 51, I think. He's just realizing like this is like a full-time thing. He needs daily, when I say recovery, like rehab, rehabilitation, just working on his body to be able to stay on the mats. And it's a daily thing now. And how long he has to spend doing it now compared to just 5-6 years ago is noticeable.
It's like having one of those old late 60s, early 70s muscle cars, man. I mean, they can run awesome and they're super cool, but the preventive maintenance required to keep them going is a ton more than just, getting in your Tesla and
Absolutely. I have, it's a stark contrast. I have, like you said, a Tesla, but then I have a 1996 Toyota Mark II, which is like a right-hand drive drift car. And it's got the holy grail of engine, the 1JZ in it. But she's an asshole when she's cold starting. Like, she's a little angry. And then something's going to break. Something's going to, like, it now has a misfire out of nowhere. So I'm going to have to figure that out. I go to start it one time. It's dumping fuel because the fuel pressure regulator came loose. Like,
So now I want you to remember, I know you're creeping up yourself, but when you talk to Alex next time, I want some little more respect in your voice and like, look, I understand now. My friend Chris put it in perspective for me that you need more preventive maintenance, right, to keep it going.
How about this? I'll think about it. I'll think about it. So, and actually, so this episode's coming out a week later. The episode right before this we're just reposting that when I was on his podcast, so people have a little bit of familiarity with them.
Oh my God, dude. I feel bad. I'm assuming you were not on good behavior.
Oh, I started the first 30 minutes a little hot. Because this is our first time sitting down and having conversation.
Yeah. See,
and you know me, if I get a little squirrely.
Yeah. Well, I'm inoculated to it. It's like I've had a Bill vaccine for years now, and I've built up a good,
and you're 7-time boosted.
for the Bill. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We won't talk about the route of administration now, will we?
No. So that'll be interesting.
I did want to, right before we leave, I want to give a shout out to a guy named Drew. So Drew came to an open mat, and this dude, he recognized my voice and was like, dude, Bill. And I go, yeah. And he says, I literally came here because of your guys' podcast, because Chris and you. He trains at another gym at Carlos Farias. And but he had heard that we were talking about that I moved to Arizona. And so he came to an open mat. Well, kind of a cool story. The guy's blind. Like fully, he's got a stick. He hits people with it. I actually told him one of the first things they said was like, I'm not exactly sold that you're truly blind. I just want you to know that. And
you're such a piece of shit, dude.
He takes his sunglasses off and just opens his eyes, and he goes, "Really? What do you think this is?" One eye is like very discolored, like kind of the whiteness, and then the other eye is like obviously not working too well. So I kind of I faked like a double eye poke at him.
You're such a freaking monster.
He didn't even flinch. And I said, "Oh shit, this dude's super legit."
Oh my God. Did you tell him you actually faked being deaf before?
I didn't tell him that, but I need to. He listens to every episode, so he'll hear this. I'll have to go over the faking deaf thing. Something I might have said that in the Foxcast. I can't tell. But
you need to release yourself in little bits at a time. You're going to scare people.
Right. Well, fortunately, he said he went back and listened to all the episodes. He's been listening for like a year. So he says he likes his sense of humor and stuff like that, and he can't wait till you're in a home. But it's gonna be it was pretty cool. He said the podcast helped him quite a bit,
Good.
And all that, and he's got a lot of good info from it. So we got to roll. Dude's actually freaking good, like, and he's kind of spicy. Like, this dude is gonna talk trash to you every step of the way. He's literally the same as like Boots, Butts McGee, where you're smashing this man's life out of his body, and he's still as zesty as it gets. And now that's Boots, but this guy, he's not zesty. He's just talking trash to your face. I was kind of doing a little bit of pressure on his knee shield, and he goes, "I roll with big guys every day. You're gonna have to do more than that." I was like, "Oh, jeez."
I love it. Speak, and I know we've said this, we're closing, but one last thing. This is public now, so I can say it. Boots reproduced.
Yes.
And so that's all I'm going to say about him, but congratulations to his wonderful wife, Andrea.
Do you... Sorry. I was going to ask, do you think the baby comes out half black? But maybe I'll cut that. I don't know.
You need to cut that out, dude.
Sorry.
You need to cut that out.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Anyway, so now cut. So now we're back. So, yeah. Boots, I figure we hope that this child really gets a good load of Andrea's genes.
Oh my gosh.
Because, yeah.
Could you imagine? Like, it's like, yeah. I'm gonna get us kicked off.
You are gonna get us kicked off. You better delete that other shit.
Yeah, I gotta delete that. So,
all right.
Why don't you go ahead and hit that music? Congratulations to Andrea and Boots. That's freaking awesome. Didn't think he had it in him, to be honest. So, that's great. Like, subscribe, questions, anything you guys got, send it to us, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.